Good evening, everybody.
Okie dokes. Hi, everybody. Welcome and good
Hi.
evening. I'm just going to quickly set this up. Good. All right. Well, it's good to see you. And welcome to day 6 of the Job Reset Fest. It's amazing. We're already a week in. We covered a lot of ground, and we've still got quite a bit of ground to cover in the next week or so. And so really looking forward to this. My name's David McLean. I'm part of the Henley Business School Africa's Business Development Unit. So I'm involved in ensuring that we get our ideas developed and into the market in a way that serves our educational objectives and that are viable business propositions as well. So I'm really looking forward to this session. I'm very grateful to have been asked to host it. Successful job search mindset. And while I was preparing for the session, I just reflected on my job search history and stories, and it occurred to me that there are two quite different headspaces that I have found myself in from navigating self-depreciating beliefs and my very loud and persuasive imposter syndrome, and on the other end of the spectrum, thinking that I'm now in with a shout and realizing that I've been up against Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates for the role, and realizing that there are other people as well that are out there in the world who I haven't known about. So, really very, very warm welcome to everybody. Without further ado, it's my greatest pleasure to introduce you to my esteemed colleagues who are probably in a rather different climatic situation to me. I'm in Cape Town and it's been 30 degrees today. Judging by photographs on social media in the last 36 hours, your story's been rather different, cold and snowy. So Stephanie Shaw and Sarah Rourke are our esteemed colleagues from our Henley UK office, and they work extensively there in the UK campuses, but also at our campuses in Denmark and Malta and Norway and Germany as well. And their passion and forte is career development, career mentorship and executive coaching. And they do that from undergraduate students in apprenticeship programs, and of course up to executives in the C-suite in MBAs and the MSCs that we offer in Johannesburg and abroad. So Stephanie and Sarah, it's a great pleasure for us. You guys have done the hard yards. You know what it takes to do this preparation of oneself for a role, for an organization and so on, but in a way that is authentic and human, where we show up in a way that is ideally as free of spin as possible, although it is a competitive game. So over to you. Great to have you. Thank you very much, and we're looking forward to your insights.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. And hello, everybody. I'm Stephanie Shaw, and this is my colleague, Sarah Rourke here. And yes, we are speaking from a snowy UK, much snowier in some parts than others. But my garden currently has a whole blanket of snow on the ground, which we love actually, because it's a bit different from the grey rain. So it's lovely to be here. And David, imposter syndrome, I think what an apt way of starting, because yes, this session today is all about mindset for successful job search, and imposter syndrome is something that I think we've all experienced at some point in our lives, that sense of, oh, I'm going to get found out, or I'm really not good enough for this. Why did they recruit me? So perhaps that will, some of that might come up in our session today. So we're actually careers and executive coaches, as David said, working with European students mostly. And both of us work extensively with MBA students and have done for some time. And much of the work we do is based on positive psychology. And by that, it's about working with the individual and looking at what works well, what are the strengths of that individual, and promoting more of that and doing more of that, rather than focusing on what's broken, what's really hard, and trying to fix it. So that's based on 30 years of research really in the positive psychology space. So it's something that we know works very well with the students we've been working with for some time now. So in this short session, we really do want to hear from you. We're here really to facilitate your expertise and give you the time, the space to reflect on what is it that will help you make the next step in your job search journey, wherever you might be on that path. So we're going to be talking about, in the time that we've got, kind of 25 minutes or so initially for this bit of the presentation, we'll be looking at a couple of things: limiting beliefs, and then we'll be looking at some strategies to help reset those beliefs. So let's kick off and start off, shall we, Sarah, with looking at some of these limiting beliefs. What do we mean by that exactly?
Well, so limiting beliefs, we all have beliefs, right? We all have a way of thinking about how the world works. And our beliefs can really make us make sense of our surroundings and other people and what's going on for us at the time and in the past and in the future. But those beliefs can often be what we would call self-limiting, which means that they become assumptions or perceptions about ourselves or the world that might hold us back from, in some cases, even trying to get what we want. For example, I'm coaching a student at the moment. Actually, she's an undergraduate, and she came along to me saying her belief was, I have nothing special to offer an employer, so why would they pick me out of hundreds and hundreds of applicants? And, you know, obviously when I hear a statement like that, I want to find out if that is true. And in many cases, I find out by further questioning that simply isn't true. And in the case of this particular student, the assumption that she had nothing particular to offer to an employer and therefore why would they pick me, etc., had stopped her from even making a single application. And when we actually dug a little bit deeper and had a look at what she did have to offer, what I found was probably one of the most interesting offers I've seen in an undergrad in at least the last couple of months, in that she'd started a family business with her mother. And I had an awful lot to offer because of that business. She had put a tiny amount about that on her CV and hadn't really even thought it was worth mentioning, and wasn't even sure whether she was going to mention it to anybody. So she'd grown this belief, and it had grown two heads. Because she wasn't quite aware of the truth of the matter. She hadn't tested the assumption anywhere. So luckily she came to me and we tested it together. But they're the kind of things that we're talking about when we talk about beliefs that we hold that can hold us back. Would you have anything to add to that, Stephanie?
Yeah, I think I'm just looking at what's been put in the chat here. Actually, my career concern at the moment, I'm now getting jobs not related to my profession, civil engineering. What could be the problem? Sometimes I'm not confident and trusting of the people on my resume reference list. Yeah, so here's a good example, right, of this. Sometimes I'm not confident and trusting of the people on my resume reference list. You know, what's the beliefs going through your head about that? What is it that you're thinking that those people, why do you not trust them? What is it, the belief that's under that, I wonder? And that's, you know, it's just worth digging it out, because actually it could be that those, you know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with those people on your resume list and they're going to say wonderful things about you. Or there could be something concrete, which is actually, no, they're not going to say good stuff about you because of a real reason. And it's worth just interrogating that a little bit to understand, well, why do I think that? What is it that's under that?
Yeah, and we're going to actually come in and give you some concrete strategies that you can use to work all of that out. So, but probably first of all, one thing we are very curious to know is a little bit about your beliefs.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, they will all be different.
Absolutely. And so this gives you a little bit of time now just to understand what are your current beliefs about yourself or the world in relation to job hunting. In the chat here, I'm going to put a little Padlet link, which if you click on that, we can all have a look at it and see what are the beliefs that are running through your mind right now about yourself or about your world in relation to job hunting. What is it you're thinking? Let's just let's go into that and have a look. And feel free to just to write some of your comments. It'll be anonymous. So just double click anywhere on that screen in front of you once you've clicked on the link.
I won't share that screen because we can all see it anyway. So I'll keep that link up for those of you who might be joining a little bit late or would like to get into the link. I'm just typing it into my screen as well.
Yeah, so we've got a comment in the chat here, and I wonder whether this can be, you could potentially type this into the Padlet on the screen if you link there. But so you're getting a lot of interview calls, and all of that has decreased recently. Mm. So what's the belief underneath that? I wonder what do you think might have happened? Mm. And so if you click on the link that I've just put into the chat, if you click on that and type, you know, what do you believe? I believe there are a lot of people who have similar skills to me. I just don't know how to stand out in the
crowd.
Wow.
Very similar to this lady that I'm coaching at the moment. It's a very common belief that we hear.
Yeah, I don't have the right skills. Yeah, I believe. Yeah, I think after applying for many jobs on LinkedIn and not getting interviews, I start to wonder if, yeah, I always feel I'm not good enough. Yeah. Mm. And you're not alone. Look, the person next to you's written exactly that. And you know, who else feels like they're not good enough? I certainly have lots of times in my life thought, oh, I just feel like I'm not good enough. And we're going to go on later to interrogate some of these beliefs, because some of them are true, and some of them maybe are not true. I must be missing something. Yeah. I've been searching for a suitable position for about 11 months now. It's absolutely exhausting, and I'm worried I won't find a suitable role for my skill set.
So what's the belief?
Yeah.
My skill set isn't good enough. There aren't enough roles. That's another set of beliefs that we hear a lot about, the actual state of the market, which is very relevant right now as well. It's not just about yourself and your abilities. It's about what's actually happening out in the world.
Mm. I don't think so. It's interesting, isn't it? There's a theme here, and how many of us can, you know, end up thinking the same, that ultimately that we're kind of not good enough. HR is to online, new skills aren't represented, keeping me in the field I'm in, not allowing me to branch out. Yeah. Am I too old? Yeah. So thank you for writing some of this. It's a vulnerable thing, actually, writing some of this up here, so thank you for sharing this. What we're going to look at now is a couple of strategies to, as I say, interrogate some of these beliefs. And the first one is the lie detector. So this is a strategy to help kind of put your beliefs into perspective, really, and help decide both of the next two strategies, really, and this one will help you to decide where to focus your energy, your time, because it's precious, right? Our time and our energy is precious. So what's this all about, the lie detector?
Yeah, so the lie detector is simply, it's a fancy way of saying test the truth of your beliefs, because we often have these statements that we have about ourselves or about a situation or about what's happening out there, and we just need to test whether it's true or not. And sometimes you're going to find that more difficult than others to test whether it's true or not. So for example, my undergraduate needed the help of another pair of eyes, i.e. my eyes, on her situation to work out whether or not it was true that she just didn't have anything in particular to help her stand out, you know, in the jobs market. So it might not be something that you're able to do alone. You might have to think about how to get support doing this from others, or how to test these truths or lies, if you like. So what you might be thinking about is, is this true? So when we start, let me just get onto the next slide. We're asking ourselves the question every time we have this assumption or perception about something. We're asking ourselves the question: is it true? And how do I know it's true? As in, where is my evidence for the truth of this matter? So it might be that you do know something to be true. It might be that you are getting many rejections. Your belief might be, therefore I am not good enough. However, the truth of the matter might be that your CV needs some work, not that you're not good enough. I hope that makes sense. So it's, how do I know that this is true? You could argue, well, I keep getting rejections, but it might be that your belief is not the thing that is true, or is not the thing that needs to be fixed, as in, I am not good enough, or this job is not for me, or I am therefore too old. You know, we hear that a lot. Nobody's giving me an interview. That's because I'm too old. It might not be the case. It might be because you need some new thinking around how to develop your story. You need some new way of presenting yourself. You need to connect with different people in order to sell yourself better to those people. So this is where we run it through this lie detector, Steph. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, just saying that actually some of this can be rattling around in our own heads as well. And one thing that I find very useful is finding someone that you can work with to help you challenge some of these thoughts that you have. So it might be a coach, or it might be a trusted friend. And by trusted friend, it's someone that's not going to say to you, oh, but you're great. It'll be absolutely fine. Everything's going to be great. You know, someone that will genuinely listen and spend the time with you and say, you know, what is it you're thinking about? Or you're telling yourself you're not good enough, or you're telling yourself that because you've not had any interviews, or everything's dried up, that clearly there's no jobs left in the market. Someone that's going to help you challenge that constructively and say, okay, let's look at this properly. Now, let's look at your CV, or let's look at the type of jobs you're applying for, and kind of help you through it and ask you some questions that can help you constructively unpick what's going on in your mind. Because if it's just rattling around, it can get quite anxiety inducing.
Yeah, and it becomes a much bigger story. There's a researcher called Brené Brown. Some of you may have heard of her, and she's from Texas, and she researches in courage, vulnerability, and shame. And she talks a lot about the stories we tell ourselves. So it's a really good phrase, because again, we find ourselves telling ourselves these stories. And a good thing to ask yourself when you find yourself in the midst of your story is, how do I know this is true? You know, where's the proof that my story is true? If you were writing an essay, if you were on the MBA program, you were writing an essay using critical thinking, you would have to back up your ideas with truth, with reality, with research. So why do we go about telling these stories about ourselves to ourselves when we often have very little evidence that backs that up, or backs up a counter argument, which can be helpful in shifting the belief? Sometimes, though, these stories are true.
Yeah. So for example, my sector isn't hiring right now. You know, there's hundreds of layoffs happening. You know, that could be true. And you know, you've put it through the lie detector and found that it is indeed true. There's plenty of evidence to support it. Well, what then? You know, and that's where the next strategy comes in, really, which is all about control or lack of, and recognizing the difference between the two.
Yeah. So some of you may have heard of Stephen Covey, and in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about the circle of influence versus the circle of concern. This is so useful to help us get some perspective and to help us work out where to spend our precious time, effort, and energy, where to spend that when we're running a job search, because it's very time consuming and it's very energy draining for some people. So what this diagram here shows is, sorry if I'm looking to the left, that's where my slides are, or the right for you. What this shows is that proactive people generally tend to focus mostly, so the larger circle is, they focus mostly on those things that they can control or influence. and they spend less time thinking about those things that worry them. And sometimes when we hear about this model, we start to think, gosh, yeah, I spend a huge amount of my time worrying about the state of the economy, or worrying about the jobs market, or, you know, and these things that we can't change. I mean, maybe at the next election you can vote a different party in, but really, you know, it's very difficult to change those things right here and now. And when we find ourselves spending a huge amount of time and effort and energy on thinking about those things, we're not paying attention to the things that we can deal with. I'll give you an example of what we mean by control and influence, actually, because some people don't get the difference between those things. So the difference between control and influence is, for example, let's say you're going to a job interview and you can control how clean your shirt is. So you can control the fact that you put on a clean shirt. So you can go to the wardrobe, choose a shirt, know that it's clean, put it on. You can control that completely. You can only influence whether it stays clean or not by choosing not to eat raspberry jam for breakfast yourself. But for example, if your child runs at you with a piece of jammy toast, there's only so much you can do to control, i.e. you can only influence the shirt getting dirty. You can't fully control it. So that's what we mean by that. There are situations that you can completely control and those that you can only influence. What is often very, very mind freeing is understanding that many more things than we imagine are way out of our control. And that's actually freeing for the mind to know that, because then you can focus on the things that are within some level of control. So going back to some of what we just said, and I think we'll stay in the group for this, and it would be lovely if anybody would be prepared to unmic themselves, or rather unmute themselves, to contribute to this conversation. It would be really good to hear from you guys, to think about what of some of those limiting beliefs that I hold, and you can use the chat as well to talk about this. Which of those things can I influence? What is out of my control, and what can I control? Because that starts to give you a bit of a roadmap as to what action to take in this job search, rather than spending too much time thinking about things that are
so, for example, if we look at the Padlet, you know, one of the beliefs up there is, I've been working for a company for more than 20 years, so it's difficult to job search. So what does that person have influence over? What does that person have control over? And what does that person need to accept? So, you know, one thing that I would suggest that person can accept is that, well, you've worked for a company for, you know, more than 20 years. Yeah. So you can't change that. That is a fact. That's something to accept and embrace. What can you influence? Well, you can certainly influence how you are perceived by a next potential employer. What can you control? You can absolutely control how you choose to look at your job search, you know, and how you choose to approach your job search. You can do it. You can think, I don't have any skills. I've worked for a company for 20 years. I know nothing about anything else. Or you can choose to believe, I have a huge amount of transferable skills. I've learned a massive amount in the last 20 years that I am able to take to my next employer, and start to list some of those transferable skills. You know, 20 years of understanding who you are and knowing what your strengths and your skills are. So actually you're in a better place probably than an 18-year-old to actually identify, what is it that I have to offer a future employer. I hope that is another example of how you can use this tool, this control, influence, accept, CIA tool.
And we'd have to also question the truth of the matter. What was the original statement? I can't see the chat.
I've been working for one company for more than 20 years, so it's difficult to job search.
It's difficult to job search. Okay, yeah. So it's difficult to job search. That's a belief, isn't it? That may or may not be true. So because what we can also check is, when we're looking at the truth of the matter is, does everybody find it difficult to job search in this situation? That's a really good question to ask yourself. It's a coaching question. It's quite a powerful one. Because we say it is difficult to job search when you've been working for a company for 20 years. Is that true for everyone? Is that a universal truth? And you probably find that when you question that, of course it's not, because there are many other people who are in that situation who do successfully job search. Now, is it difficult for me? Yes, it could be that for you, the writer, that's a difficult thing for you. So that's about working on what's difficult about it. And that might get you a slightly different belief, which we then could run through the lie detector. So you see, this is about asking questions, interrogating your beliefs, asking questions of yourself, or having a friend ask some questions of you, or a coach, so that you start to unpick what's actually going on here, what's difficult. Exactly. Is it difficult recognizing your skills, as Stephanie said? Is it difficult finding time? What specifically is difficult about this? And when you start to get to the nub of that, you then start to understand, oh, actually, maybe I could find some more time in the week, or maybe I could do an exercise which helps me identify my skills. We could do this topic, by the way, for about 2 days straight and go into this. So sadly, we don't have that much time left, and I'm wondering whether, David, are we pretty much out of time for this, and do we want to go to questions? We've got a little takeaway for people to.
Yeah, I think we can start to conclude. Based on all of the notes, the questions, the queries, the statements in the Sarah's beliefs environment, and all of the questions and requests for suggestions in the chat, I think will definitely give us, more than enough to discuss for the next nearly half an hour. So, Sarah, if you want to start to conclude, then we can move to the Q&A.
Mm-hmm. So what we wanted to conclude with essentially was to leave you with some points for you to take away, to reflect and act upon, which is, and again, the writing down, Stephanie, isn't it? It's so powerful when we start to write it, get it out of your head onto a piece of paper would be the first thing to do.
Yeah.
And then only then can we really see what we're dealing with, i.e. our monster minds that can take over sometimes. So it's important to start understanding what your beliefs are. And the writer who wrote "It is hard" because of the 20 years of experience, again, dig deeper. What's hard? What specifically is hard about that? Ask yourself those types of questions to find the bottom belief, if you like, in that one, the underlying one. Then running them through the lie detector. Then thinking about, so the lie detector being, is this true? How do I know it's true? Where's my evidence? And then how much control or influence do you have on these truths? And therefore, where do I spend my precious time, effort, and energy? Just doing that might start to help you see light where it can sometimes feel quite dark. That pretty much concludes us.
Has anybody got any questions? Or David, is there any questions that have come in on the chat that perhaps?
Yes, and there's so many amazing questions, and I just want to acknowledge everybody who is on the call, and those that have contributed in the chat and in the beliefs notes. Is that, this is the spirit behind the Job Reset Fest. There's a safe environment where we can say these things and ask and reach out about these things, which oftentimes are not easy to do because we don't want to blow our professional cover. But this is evidence to us, and I'm quite moved by it, to be honest, is that this is what it's about. And the fact that we can do this together, many of us haven't ever met each other, I think speaks volumes also to how the virtual environment can be an incredibly engaging space, and that it doesn't only have to be face-to-face. So I just thought I made a few notes as well that I'd like to just share very briefly, and then we can deal with questions. Is based on my own experience, I've navigated so many things. I resonate with pretty much every single thing that everybody has posted here this afternoon. And, you know, essentially I can see there's quite a tone of exhaustion, of I don't know what to do anymore. You know, is it me? Is it something else? I don't know. And what I found really, really helpful that I did a number of years ago, which it had a profound impact on me, was I struggled to articulate myself crisply and professionally when I wrote in the first person. I am da, 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 da. It just felt weird. And, you know, I grew up in a culture that says, you know, don't be vain and talk about yourself and so on. So what I did was I literally tore up my CV and I started afresh with a blank piece of paper. I did it in Word and I wrote it in the third person. So I said, David is, David has. And I found that it had an instant positive influence on me, feeling less kind of coy and weird about it, and just saying, you know, if I was speaking about myself, what would I say? And that allowed me the space to kind of distance myself from the imposter and stuff, to be a little bit more sort of intelligent and polished about it. And then another thing that we spoke about quite a bit in one of the sessions in last year's 21 lessons, Mark Orpen-Lyles shared with us the principle or the presence of post-traumatic growth. And the reason why I thought I would just mention it now is we're very familiar with the principle or the concept or the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. And post-traumatic growth is a very powerful thing that we probably all experienced, every one of us, regardless of our story and our history, in that what comes out of deep challenge, which clearly a number of us are going through at the moment, is equally an opportunity to increase fortitude and increase that resilience and so on, to go, I can do this, and you know, I'm going to keep on going. I really appreciate that some people have been unemployed for quite a few months and so on. So I just thought I would share those notes. There we go. So I'm just going to, so I'll just speak to Sarah and Stephanie. Lafencia says, any strategies you could share on job searching and approaching opportunities, ideas for us to consider? So any strategies you could share on job searching and approaching opportunities?
Wow, yeah. Where do we want to start with this one?
Well, I think probably networking is one of the absolute best strategies, and Sarah and I could talk forever about the two, but the reason I also say networking is because someone has also put in the chat and noticed a question that says, you know, what do you think about online job applications? Are they a waste of time? What are your thoughts? And so should we talk a bit about job networking, Sarah?
Yes. I'm trying to think how to succinctly answer this, or reasonably succinctly. Yeah. Networking is this horrible word that everyone goes, oh, just don't talk to me about networking. All networking is, as far as we're concerned, is finding people that may, and giving them a reason to speak to you. That's one thing. And then talking to them, not necessarily asking them for a job, but talking to them to find out more about what's going on for them and their sector and their area.
So you might identify, you know, you kind of think, well, this is the area that I want to get into. This is the sector. This is the industry. This might be the type of job I want to do is this. You then find someone using LinkedIn, and one of the wonderful things of being, you know, a student at Henley is that you're then part of a Henley alumni network, which is the biggest in the world, I think, actually, Henley's alumni network. And so you can identify someone in the Henley alumni network and say, you're doing the job that I'd love to do, or you're in the sector that I would love to be in. Can I have a 20-minute conversation with you on Zoom or on the telephone, just to understand a little bit about your world? As Sarah said, not please, can you help me get a job in your company? But I'd really just like to understand a bit about what you do and what are your challenges and what are the highs and lows of the sector and the type of role that you do. And you build likability. You want that person to like you. So you need to just be human and real with that person. And if they like you, they're more likely to help you and say, hey, actually, maybe you should speak to a colleague of mine, or have you thought about this, or have you thought about reading that? And the more you do that, the more you increase your knowledge, the more you start to be able then to speak the language that they speak, you know, the technical language, the cultural language that they have in their organization. And it also, you're building a network of people around you that will advocate for you, hopefully, and say, hey, to their recruiting manager in their organization, hey, I just had a conversation with someone, you know, a great person who you should speak to them, because I think that they could probably do this role. You know, that would be the absolute dream, but your goal really is to just speak to as many people as you can, to understand their world and to understand what the challenges are, what the highs and lows are, so that you increase your knowledge and your network.
And people often talk about, oh, like there's certain people who seem to be in the right place at the right time, and I don't think that that's true, that somebody's in the right place at the right time by chance. They put themselves there. So the more you do that, the more likely you are to very much be in the right place at the right time. So you've talked to a couple of people in a certain organization, and then a role comes up. And not only are you in the right place at the right time because they may champion you for that role, but you've also learned enough about the organization to put forth an extremely good application. So, you know, to be able to convince the person that's going to interview you why exactly you are interested in that organization. You've got a lot of primary research to draw on. And again, that can be the difference that makes people stand out in a jobs market. It's not always the skill set, because skill sets can be very similar. It's my passion and my interest, and me having gone out of my way to find out more and to get involved can go a huge way in the eyes of many people. They want loyalty, they want longevity often in roles, and therefore someone coming along saying, I've researched this company, I understand what you do, I've spoken to several people, that's a great candidate.
Yeah. And even better, that you don't just make an online application. You make the online application, but before you do, you've spoken to someone in that organization.
Yeah.
So that when you make the application, you can put the name of that person in. If they're okay with that, you say, I've spoken to name of person, and then whoever picks up that online application will be able to speak internally. Hey, I'll just give a call to that person that they've name dropped. What did you think of this person? When you spoke to them on the phone, did you think they were any good? And hopefully that person's going to say, yeah, absolutely, they were brilliant on the phone. You know, let's get them in for an interview. That makes it sound very simplistic, but I've seen that with many MBA students, and Sarah has too. This absolutely works. I don't believe you should make an online application without having spoken to someone really in the organization.
Yeah.
So that they're expecting your application.
And also, added to that, if for some reason the job you really like the look of and you can't for any reason speak to somebody in that organization, again, the belief is online applications don't work. That's not necessarily true. Online applications that are not tailored, targeted, and selling the candidate well do not work. Online applications where somebody clearly understands what the role is, clearly understands themselves in relation to the role, and is able to articulate that, all sounds quite difficult. They can work, sometimes in the absence of having spoken to someone. So even if you haven't spoken to someone, an online application can work as long as you are using the things that you can control to make sure that that stands out amongst a sea of same or a sea of poor online applications.
I've also found that many times in interviews, one-on-one or on panels as well, that too many candidates, in my experience, have arrived and the only objective is to get employment. Like I can see the only interest in that conversation is a salary as soon as possible. So how can one overcome that or transcend that? And I think that it's going beyond the obvious. Finding out the vision, mission, and values of an organization is obvious. However, what are the senior people saying? Who are the senior people? They might not be even listed on the website. Who are the key decision makers and influencers in the organization? And what do they say? Ideally, one would go far down, fathoms down, way beyond the website. So I can see one of the reasons I wanted to work at Henley was because John Foster Pedley, our dean, has things that really resonate with my values and my goals and aspirations, and not just in my career, but in my life. And I wanted to get as close as possible to that. And I have the good fortune of working for the organization, but it also didn't happen overnight. And I'm not saying that, as some kind of clever guy. It was about a 5 or 6 year quite slow burn, because it wasn't just about having certain skills and qualifications. As what does the organization need, and is there a connection? Because just because somebody is highly driven and passionate and competent and has whatever qualifications, it doesn't mean an organization has a gap for that particular profile at that time. But it doesn't mean stop looking. Just getting back to the chat, I'm mindful of time. As Sarah said, we could do this for the rest of the week and still have things to talk about.
David, may I just give a little bit of reassurance there for anyone who took an in-breath in horror at the 5 or 6 year wait to get into an organization?
Yes.
There's a book that we can recommend to you that will, and by the way, this book does not promise to get you a job in 2 hours, even though it's called the 2-hour job search, but that can give you a methodology to shorten that time frame. And it's called the 2-hour job search. So that's just to say, David, to reassure people that it won't always take 5 or 6 years at all, because we know that some of you are very much in need of looking for employment now.
Indeed. Thanks for qualifying that, Sarah. The Kotso and a number of other people on the call also make reference to concerns around referees and possibly referees that are on their resumes that they have concerns that are not the best sort of endorsees of them and endorsers of them. And I guess that also speaks to the, even if I'm not in my dream job currently, for me to still be applied and invested as long as I'm there, because that period will always be on my resume, even if it's not necessarily the highlight of my life. Absolutely. Let me just check it out here. Yvonne has an important question. She says, I'm struggling to see what you can control and what you can influence if your belief is that you are just not good enough.
Yeah. Do you want to take this one, or yeah?
Yeah, so that's I think if you very much believe that, I think it's very useful in that case to speak to someone that can help you interrogate that, a coach, or as I say, a trusted friend, because you sometimes need to step out of yourself to be able to see yourself from a different angle. And somebody else can often do that. If you feel actually I don't have anyone to speak to right now, then try and ask yourself some questions that will help yourself see you from a different. So, for example, think of someone that loves you dearly, really loves you dearly. What would they say are your strengths? Think of, what would your best friend say about you? How would they describe you?
Or the sales pitch. If Sarah was a product and I was selling the benefits of Sarah to somebody, how would I? It's David's third person thing. Yeah. It's stepping aside and saying, Sarah's a product, I need to sell it to this sector in this kind of role. How do I sell the benefits of Sarah?
Yeah.
Walk away from yourself to do it.
Yeah. Because we believe and know that there's value in every single one of us. It's just that sometimes we're so stuck in our own heads that we can't see it for ourselves. But so it's just about finding the way of unlocking that, because it's absolutely there.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Sarah and Stephanie, could you speak to, there's a note in the beliefs, one of our colleagues' beliefs is, I'm not a specialist, rather a generalist. Can you speak to that?
I think I would have to dig a little bit deeper into that in terms of, okay, so maybe it's, the question is, what does that stop you doing, or what do you believe that prevents you from doing? Or I think I'd have to know a bit more about that, actually.
It sounds as if there's a belief which is a specialist is better than a generalist.
Good point, yeah.
And I think it very much depends what you want to do, because in some cases, in fact, the future of the world of work, we quite often talk about, we all need to be a bit more generalist and less specialist. So it depends what's going on. Whoever's written that, it depends what's going on beneath. As Sarah says, we'd need to dig a bit more, but I would challenge the assumption that being a specialist is better than a generalist, because actually that's not necessarily the case.
I think this one, I don't think I'm good enough, even though I have the qualifications and experience. Possibly something that every single one of us believe and live to some degree. Can you speak to that?
I think that's very similar to what we just had before. It's almost, you've almost answered your own, you've almost started to dispel your own belief there with the, I have all of these things, yet I still don't think I'm good enough. It's partly to do with really taking a step back away from yourself and understanding that, what does the market want, or what does this particular role want? And if I have all of those things, then the truth of the matter is I am good enough. So the other question might be, what else do I think about myself that is stopping me from doing this? There's something else in there, I would say. You know that you have all the things that you need. So what is it that you need to get more of in order to, you know, put the application in or do whatever it is?
Part of this is about also remembering what you've achieved in life, because we can forget, and we get so overwhelmed with negative thoughts that we then just think, oh, I've not done, I can't do anything. And actually that's never true. One thing I talk to clients about is to just get a blank sheet of paper and to draw 6 circles on a blank sheet of paper. And then in those circles, write down 6 things that you're proud of in your life that you've achieved. And it can be anything. It can be tiny or large, huge things. But the important thing is to remember, what is it that I've done that I'm proud of? What is it when I'm at my best, when I'm performing well, and I'm performing well and feeling energized and feeling good, what is it I'm doing in those moments? What do I tend to be? Because that's your strength. When you're energized and you're performing well and it feels good, that means you're using a strength. And identifying what your strengths are is a really great way to build your own self-confidence and know, actually I can do this, and I naturally do this, you know, and we often forget what our strengths are because it's so natural to us that we just assume, well, anyone can do that. Mm-hmm. And that's never the case either. Like, we all have very unique strengths that we overlook because we just think, well, everyone can. And so getting this blank sheet of paper and writing the things that you're proud of, the things that when you're at your best and you feel energized, capturing those on that piece of paper too, and making sure you look at that sheet on a regular basis to remind yourself of who you are and what you've done that what you've done that you're proud of, that makes you and authentic.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, that's the essence of it right there. And when we're lacking self-confidence, it's tricky to say I'm good at anything, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the deal. But I guess that's what's being called out in us, is to push through that and just go, all right, little person on big shoulder, not now. Go and have tea. I've got something to do for my dignity and for my best life, as it were. Well, we have one more time for one more question with Lefense. I'll quickly paraphrase it, but essentially the essence of it is that an HR practitioner recently highlighted to Lefense that the portfolio was too broad. And I've also heard of that, where somebody has relatively short tenure in numerous roles, especially recently, or are they a flight risk, and so on. Can you speak to that? Like how can one present oneself if that is one's resume's reality?
I think for me, I'd be looking at where are my grouped skill sets and strengths, like Stephanie just said. So rather than on focusing on the chronological nature of me jumping from job to job, I'd be presenting myself as somebody who has a 5-point skill set to narrow so that the reader, because you're still giving them the same information, you're just presenting it differently, so that the person looking at that resume sees it differently. And it's your job. This is what you can control. How do they see what I have? You can't change what you have. Yeah. You can choose how much of it you present and how you present it. And I would be trying to present it in a very succinct, almost like my big headlines. I am this, 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 and this. Yes. And I happen to have got this in many different organizations, but how would you say
we
that?
Talk about the golden thread running through our career. And even if you have had short tenure at a number of different companies, it's just like Sarah said, it's all about how you talk about it rather than what you're talking about. So you can say, you can have a story, you need to prepare this, but prepare, what is it that I gained or that I contributed in each of those organizations? What did I learn from that? And what skills am I carrying through, and am I building all the way through my career? And so you always have this golden thread that makes your story understandable and compelling and makes sense. Now we understand why they have been in all those organizations and what they've gained and what they contributed as a result of being in all those organizations. To be honest, the future of the world of work is we need to be so adaptable. We need to be able to change quickly and learn quickly. If you've been in lots of different organizations, you've actually had to really build the muscle of adaptability. And so you can look at it as a real positive, and say, actually, I'm delighted to have had the experience in so many different organizations because I've gained this as a result, and I will now and I know that I'll be able to fit in very quickly in your organization because it's something that I'm well practiced at.
Indeed, and I think, Lefense, thanks for clarifying the tenure piece. I get that. Another thing that Stephanie is sharing with us is important is that also that I'll just use an example very quickly. I'm mindful of time. Is that if I'm in mining and I've been involved in operations and finance, for example, and now I'm moving into education or retail. Yes, the sector is new to me, but the principles I can bring with me and adapt them very quickly to another sector. And importantly is, I don't think any discerning organization will expect any candidate applying for a role to absolutely be a carbon copy of the job advertisement or the job description. The assumption is that somebody who is not just a good experience fit, but a good personality or cultural fit will then be supported and mentored by the organization to progress. Really, unfortunately, because there's clearly lots to share and learn here, is we need to conclude. But Sarah and Stephanie, thank you. And it's clearly, an hour is not long enough, but hopefully it's been long enough just for us to learn things that can just give us a little bit more, energy and reassurance that we're alive and we're here, that we have talent, even if we're lacking confidence at the moment, and that we can go for it. It was too brief, but that's possibly a good sign. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you to Mamodise, Graham, and the Henley team for having us here and present and correct. It's really been a pleasure, and may everybody have the energy and have the, have the vibe to keep going. This is not how it will be forever, whatever your current reality is that you're wanting to change.
Good luck, everyone.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
Have a good evening and be safe.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.